On an expedition in search of the flower that gives eternal life, a group of scientists have an accident and end up in the middle of Anaconda territory, forcing them to fight for survival while fleeing from giant snakes. Today we're going to recap the story of the 2004 movie, Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. In the middle of the Borneo jungle, an indigenous group is hunting a tiger when they notice that the other animals around them are extremely agitated. Thinking it's because of the predator, they continue searching for the feline, who jumps over the humans while running away from something even more lethal, a gigantic anaconda that starts chasing the indigenous man through the forest. While fleeing, the man ends up being swallowed by the snake and only manages to free himself by sticking his blade into the animal's body, but when he runs again, he ends up falling into a shallow lagoon where he is finally devoured by the anaconda. At WH's headquarters in New York, the company's leaders hold a meeting with the research team and decide to terminate funding, claiming that they have made no progress in recent months. To keep their study afloat, Jack and Mitchell claim that they will get a lot of money and explain that they are studying the bloody orchid, a flower native to Borneo that blooms every 7 years and stays alive for only 6 weeks after that. When at its peak, this orchid can extend cell life by more than 50 times, making it the ideal ingredient for creating a fountain of youth in capsule form. Realizing the sales potential this has, the CEO asks if they have tested it on humans, and Jack replies that they need more orchids before they start the testing phase, as the sample they got has already decomposed. With only a week to go until the flowering season ends, Mitchell asks for money to travel to Borneo and the president authorizes the expedition. Now that they have the money, the two scientists put together a team of researchers who are going to Indonesia to collect it, but when they get there, they discover that they are in the middle of the rainy season. As they need a boat to get upriver to the center of the island, Sam tries to hire a transport company. But they all refuse to sail in the storm, and his wife comes up with the idea of hiring a local captain. Desperate, they go to the bar frequented by a well-known fisherman and offer $25,000 for the trip, but Bill argues that he is the only one willing to go up the river in the rain and demands $50,000 to take them. Out of options, Mitchell accepts the offer and meets up with the rest of the team in front of the boat, where Bill and his sidekick Tran present the accommodation. With everyone on board, Jack meets with the captain and shows him the map of the place where the explorers found the first orchid, but Bill sees that the route they followed must be flooded and suggests that they go up slowly to check the path. Racing against time, Cole, the team's geographer, checks his computer and discovers that the best option is to take another route. Now that the route is set, Bill heads upstream while the scientists communicate with the company to report their situation, but because of the rains, the signal begins to fail and they are left completely incommunicado. With nothing to do, the group spends the day sailing until it's finally time for dinner. Seeing the food on the table, Kong, Bill's pet monkey, can't resist the bananas and goes over to the table to try and grab one, but as he's already had his dinner, the man kicks him off and he decides to go to the roof of the boat to get some fruit from the trees. Not seeing that his pet has left, Bill keeps the boat moving and Kong ends up being left behind, forced to shout to try to get his guardian's attention. After a while, the little monkey gives up and starts eating the fruit when he is found by a gigantic snake that starts chasing him. Frightened, Kong runs into a tree trunk and hides, hoping that the snake won't catch him, but soon it manages to find its prey and the monkey is forced to climb a tree, being chased by the anaconda that slowly climbs after him. From inside the boat, Bill hears Kong's cries of despair without realizing that they are his pets. He doesn't realize he's missing until the next morning. While the man is looking for the monkey, researcher Gail is checking to see if the signal has returned, when she leans on the hatch, which suddenly opens, causing her to fall into the water. To save her, Sam orders Tran to slow down the boat and everyone goes to the back to help, but before they can rescue her, the blood in the water attracts the attention of a crocodile that attacks her from behind, forcing Bill to jump into the water to rescue the girl. With his help, Gail manages to get back to the ship and the captain stays behind to fight the crocodile, piercing the eyes of the gigantic crocodile while Tran takes aim with a rifle, but can't shoot so as not to hit his captain. Suddenly, the crocodile begins to do its attack and sinks with Bill soon after. After a few tense seconds, the man emerges safe and sound and removes his knife from the lifeless crocodile's head, returning to the boat like a true hero. But before they know it, the giant snake appears behind them and devours the carcass of the knocked-out crocodile. Unaware of the risk they are taking, everyone gathers around the table while Ben stitches up Gale's arm, but while they are distracted, Kong falls into the middle of the group out of nowhere, giving them all quite a fright. After calming down his monkey, Bill goes to Jack and asks to talk in private. In the cabin, the captain warns that the river is getting fuller and fuller and says that they will have to go around another way, but knowing that this will delay the trip by 2 days, Jack offers Bill another $50,000 to ignore the risks and go ahead anyway. With the deal done, the captain leaves Tran in charge and goes to rest, but wakes up at dawn when he realizes that the logs in the water have damaged the rudder. To fix the boat, Bill tinkers with the engine and then tries to speed up the boat, but the propeller is totally jammed and they end up missing the turn-off, heading towards an extremely rough waterfall. With no way to save himself, Bill just watches as his boat plunges downstream and sinks into the shallows. With everyone adrift, the captain orders them to swim towards the shore without suspecting that the Anaconda is right behind them and almost devours Sam. But at the last second, the woman manages to get out of the water and the snake decides to turn around for no reason. Now that the boat has been destroyed, the survivors begin to check the remaining equipment and discover that there is only one telephone left, which by some miracle still has a signal. Knowing that it will take days for the nearest patrol to reach them, Bill decides that he will call a friend who sails in the area and arrange to meet him on the shore a few kilometers ahead. The man then says that if they go around the water, it will take them 2 days to reach the rescue point, but that if they cut their way through the forest, they will arrive before nightfall. Even though it's dangerous, the group accepts the suggestion and Bill calls his friend John to arrange the meeting point. With everything settled, the man ends the call and leads the group through the jungle until they reach the edge of a river. With no way around, Bill decides to walk across and the scientists follow, without realizing that the Anaconda is already swimming around them. Suddenly, Cole feels something passing between his legs and calls out to his companions to warn them, but Bill thinks it's just a fish and tells them to keep moving. At the end of the line, Ben is picking on Gale when he is pulled underwater by something. Without knowing what happened, the survivors run towards the doctor who gets up badly injured, only to be devoured by the snake a few seconds later. Panicked by the size of the creature, the group runs to the other side of the shore and stops a few kilometers ahead to talk about what has happened. Trying to calm them down, Bill says that anacondas are territorial animals, so they shouldn't meet any more on the way, and as this one has just fed, it will be a few weeks before it feels hungry and hunts again. Optimistically, the survivors continue their journey to the boat that will allow them to return home, but Jack and Mitchell are against this and argue that they need to find the orchids before the flowering season ends. Although he manages to convince the rest of the team, Bill doesn't agree and says that once they get to the boat, the expedition is over and the only place he'll take the crew is home. Thinking about the money, Jack says that they had an agreement and the captain tells him that he can keep the money if he wants, but that under no circumstances will he take them to the orchids. With that cleared up, Bill returns to leading the group and tells Sam about the deal he made with Jack to continue following the route, blaming himself for having accepted the extra $50,000 and for Ben's elimination. A few kilometers ahead, the group is passing through high bush when Mitchell notices a gigantic leech behind Cole's neck. To help him, Bill takes a lighter and uses the flames to make the parasite break free, but when he lifts up the man's shirt, he realizes that dozens of other leeches are stuck to his back feeding. While Bill removes Cole's parasites, Mitchell treats the wounds on his feet and tries to put on his boot when he is stopped by Tran, who warns him that there is a stone spider inside. When he hears that this animal is capable of paralyzing an adult man for 2 days, Jack becomes interested in using it in his research and puts it in a jar to take back to the lab. Not far away, John is sailing towards the meeting point when something hits the boat and knocks over his drink. Curious to find out what it was, the man stops the boat and approaches the water thinking it's a log, but to his misfortune, it's another anaconda that climbs into the boat and grabs him by the leg, pulling him along as he tries to hold on to the rudder. With absurd strength, the snake manages to devour John, who accidentally reactivates the engines, causing the boat to accelerate out of control and crash into the shore. Far away, the survivors can see the flames of the explosion and decide to go there to investigate, finding John's boat in pieces. Thinking he was drunk and drowned when he fell off the boat, Bill asks the survivors to search the wreckage for resources and Jack finds the case containing John's revolver, deciding to take it with him without telling anyone. Even with the explosion, The group manages to find valuable resources and Mitchell takes the fuel tank while Tran finds a bag full of flares. Tired, everyone in the group sits down to recover their energy and Mitchell is curious to see the carcass of some fish on the shore, wondering what animal could have done this. Knowing the area, Tran says it was the natives and that there must probably be a village nearby. So all they have to do is find the village so they can borrow a boat and return to civilization. With their new goal set, they walk through the woods again until they find John's body covered in wool next to a tree. Realizing that he has been expelled by an anaconda, Bill comes to the conclusion that there are more snakes in the forest and claims that the one that devoured John must still be hungry, as it put the food out in the middle of digestion. Confused, Gale recalls that he said that anacondas are territorial and Bill confirms the information, but adds that during the breeding season, the males start wandering around the forest looking for a female. In other words, there must be dozens of hungry snakes around them. Racing against time, the survivors continue their journey and finally reach the village. But unlike what they had imagined, they find the place completely empty. Except for a lifeless anaconda with the body of an indigenous man inside it. With no one to talk to, the group goes to the pier and discovers that the natives have taken all the boats during their escape, so they will have to build one with their own hands if they want to return home. Together, the survivors begin to dismantle the indigenous huts and use the materials to build their own raft. While everyone is working, Jack takes a break to wash his face and finds an orchid stuck in the basin, and is extremely excited by the discovery. Excited, he calls Sam to see his find and they finally understand why the anacondas are so big, because thanks to the properties of the orchids, the snakes are living longer and their size is getting bigger and bigger. Excited, Jack says that this is proof that they were right and once again insists that they should get the orchids before going home, but the rest of the group disagree and try to talk him out of it, including Mitchell. Even so, the man insists that they should go after the flower and Sam refuses, telling everyone that he has offered Bill another $50,000 to stay in the flooded river. Disgusted by this attitude, Mitchell and the others refuse to cooperate with Jack, who storms off in a rage, leaving the others to build the raft while he sits doing nothing. After spending the night working, the group finishes the raft and ties it in place, giving Mitchell time to go to the main hut to tend to the wounds on his foot. Searching for medicine, the man opens Jack's backpack and finds the pot with the spider in one of the pockets, but as it's nothing useful, he puts it aside and continues looking. In the background, Mitchell finds the box containing John's gun and a phone that is still working, and is furious that his partner hasn't told him anything. While he's trying to call the emergency services, Jack shows up and does everything he can to convince him to continue after the orchid, but when Mitchell refuses, the researcher doesn't hesitate to open the pot and throw the spider at his friend's arm, causing him to be bitten. As Mitchell screams in pain, Jack retrieves the phone and the pistol and leaves the cabin while his former partner goes into a state of paralysis. Near the shore, the survivors are putting their belongings on the raft when Jack arrives telling them not to bother Mitchell, but Sam finds his attitude suspicious and decides to go to the hut to see what has happened. There, the girl finds the man already completely paralyzed and notices the bite mark on his arm. Without warning, Mitchell sees the anaconda behind Sam and tries to use his eyes to warn her, but the girl doesn't understand and leaves the cabin to ask what Jack has done. While Mitchell is alone with the creature, Sam begins to accuse Jack and starts an argument that only ends when they realize that the researcher is already being devoured. Wanting to help, everyone rushes to the hut and leaves Jack alone with the raft, giving him the perfect opportunity to escape with it. With no idea what he has just done, the survivors set fire to the hut in an attempt to eliminate the snake and run back to shore. But now that Jack has taken the raft and they have burnt down the last remaining building, the group has no choice but to go after the scientist and recover the boat. Knowing exactly where he is going, Sam suggests cutting through the jungle and ambushing Jack when he goes to get the orchids, but the journey is not easy and they pass several snakes that try to separate them. Running from the predators, the group ends up falling down a ravine and ending up in the den of one of the snakes, but with no way to return the same way, they are forced to explore the cave until they find another way out. In the middle of the journey, Cole drops his flashlight into the water and stops to retrieve it, but this ends up causing him to fall behind and get separated from the group. To save the geologist, Tran goes back a bit and manages to find the man totally hysterical next to some skeletons. Now that they are behind, The two of them pick up the pace to join the group, and Tran ends up getting careless, causing him to step on a crack in the ground and sink into the narrow passage. With no way back on his own, the man fights for his life while Cole tries to save him, but while breathing in one of the air pockets, Tran ends up being found by an anaconda and is devoured while still underwater. Panicked, Cole runs desperately and manages to find the group, who are already crawling towards the exit, but without realizing it, Cole ends up taking the anaconda to his friends, who have to hurry to avoid being caught. After the three have passed, the geographer approaches the hole and ends up getting stuck in the rocks, forcing the others to pull as hard as they can before he is devoured. Through teamwork, the group manages to free Cole, and Sam uses a machete to cut off the snake's gigantic head. Happy to be alive, the geographer starts celebrating until he is grabbed from behind and carried away by another monster, forcing Bill and the others to run after him to save him. Searching through the forest, the survivors find Cole being crushed, and Bill decides to throw his knife at the creature's head, which goes out instantly, knocking his friend to the ground practically unharmed. A few kilometers ahead, Jack stops the raft in the area where they found the orchids and continues searching on foot, finding hundreds of flowers after just a few minutes of walking. While he is collecting his precious orchid, the survivors sneak through the woods and plan to catch the raft while Jack is distracted, but they accidentally step on a stick and alert the man to their presence. Unaware that they have been discovered, they arrive at the boat, and Sam begins to rummage through Jack's backpack, which appears behind her. While the woman distracts the scientist, Bill picks up his knife and prepares to throw it, but Jack notices the movement and fires a shot before he can do anything. With everyone surrendered, Jack takes them back to the orchids and knocks Bill out to avoid trouble, forcing Gale to tie Cole up afterwards. With no more threats, the man leaves Sam with the mission of filling the suitcases with orchids, forcing her to cross a log over the snake's nest to get to the flowers. Fighting against the panic, the woman manages to balance herself and reaches the flowers on the other side, but as she's crossing back over, the trunk begins to give way and Jack orders her to throw down her rucksack. Left with no options, Sam obeys and Jack prepares to leave when Bill appears and surprises him with a punch in the back, causing the scientist to drop his suitcase a few meters from the nest. As he is injured, Bill ends up at a disadvantage and is knocked out by Jack, who lets him go after the backpack, but as soon as he retrieves the orchids, the man ends up being bitten by the stone spider that managed to escape from the pot. While being slowly paralyzed, Jack ends up slipping off the ravine and falling into the middle of the nest along with his backpack, being devoured by the snakes while still alive, just like Mitchell. A few meters up the path, Cole and Gale try to help Sam, whose leg is caught in a vine. With so much weight, the trunk gives way and the girl hangs upside down, becoming the target of one of the anacondas in the nest. Panicked, Sam begins to struggle and the vine ends up giving way under her weight, causing her to fall among the anacondas just like Jack. By some miracle, she manages to stay safe and climbs out of the water without becoming a basilisk lunch. But even so, one of the snakes chases her and attacks Gale, who defends herself with a gallon of fuel, leaving the mutant creature's mouth full of flammable liquid. To end things once and for all, Bill takes Jack's revolver and tries to shoot the anaconda, but to his misfortune the gun is out of ammunition and in the end it's Cole who saves the day. With a flare gun, the man shoots the snake in the mouth, which begins to catch fire and falls back into the nest, exploding next to the other anacondas and causing a landslide that eliminates them all. After so much suffering, the survivors can finally get on the raft and return home safe and sound together with Kong. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps.